What's happening? A good Thursday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. This is episode 200 by my count. That's right, episode 200 of the Nick Cattle Show. I appreciate every single one of you that have invested your time, that have liked, that have commented, that have subscribed. It means the world to me. Thank you so very much. Quick note at the beginning here, Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins has agreed to a 3-year deal according to Adam Schefter. So Waddle is staying in Miami, and that's why when we talk about free agency in 2025 and that position, we've got to pump the brakes a little bit because as we know, wide receiver ones are not readily available throughout the league. Yes, you get the trade like Tyreek Hill. Yes, you get a trade like A.J. Brown, but those are not very common occurrences. And so we have to appreciate that and understand that if the Patriots want a bona fide wide receiver one, you hope that one of these guys in the room right now develops into that person, or you draft that guy in next year's draft. Maybe somebody will slip through the cracks. Maybe somebody will become available via trade or free agency. But right now, you see all of these wide receiver signing deals. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, the list goes on. Devontae Smith in Philadelphia. That's how this works. So Jalen Waddle staying in Miami. We have a lot to get to today. We'll get to some OTA notes a little bit later. Drake May sounds like he's improving from last week to this week, which is great news. Plus, we have a Kristaps Porzingis update much later, a little bit on the Celtics. Let's start here, though. Elliot Wolf was on Up and Adams this week, and the spending debate, for whatever reason, continues to be, raged upon in certain corners. It does not go away. This idea that the Patriots have not spent this offseason, that they are cheap, that narrative continues to find itself in the ether here, especially in New England. And so Eliot Wolf was on, again, with Kay Adams, Up and Adams, and here's what Wolf said on spending. This is transcribed by Chris Mason of Mass Live. I would argue that we did spend money. We signed what we felt was the best offensive tackle in free agency and the best tight end in free agency. They just so happen to be guys that we retained. We gave Kyle Duggar a contract extension. We added pieces at almost every level of the team. The first thing that stood out to me about that comment from Wolf is best offensive tackle in free agency. He's talking about, obviously, Mike Onwenu. There is some serious conviction in Onwenu's ability to play tackle within that Patriots organization. Wolf's not telling us we signed a very good offensive lineman. He's not telling us, we went out and signed one of the better offensive linemen in free agency or one of the better tackles in free agency. To say that he believes they signed the best tackle in free agency tells us how they feel and how confident they are in Onwenu's ability to play right tackle this season. There are no questions from their point of view. What they see on the film, what they know of the player, they feel like Onwenu can play tackle and play tackle at a relatively high level, which is something that I don't think Bill Belichick believes. So that's a change. That's a change within the regime in the front office that they believe Onwenu can be that guy. I thought that spoke volumes about Onwenu and his value to this organization and how they viewed him as a player. Many people question if he can play tackle. Apparently not Elliot Wolf. And when he's played tackle, he's played pretty well. But Wolf went over the top saying, this guy was the best tackle in free agency. Now, maybe he's giving us some hyperbole to make it sound better, but Wolf really doesn't sound like that guy from what I've read and from what I've seen. So pretty interesting comment there about Mike Onwenu. We'll get some more thoughts, but first, let's jump to a couple of super chats. King Cato 21, Nick, if the Pats currently have an idea of when May starts in 2024, if the time comes and Brissett has them in the wild card hunt, do they start May and risk him being the reason why they get eliminated? This is a very interesting question, King Cato. And I think it comes down to the players in that locker room and the feel of the team. I don't think Gerard Mayo would make a dramatic shift like that if Brissett does have them in the wild card hunt. Now, in the wild card hunt is an interesting term within itself, right? You can be in the hunt, but still be a few games back. If you're still a few games back and you have a tough schedule that you're looking at moving forward, then you might pull the trigger. But I said earlier, going back a few weeks ago, if this team is, and I don't expect this, but let's just say it for argument's sake, right? Hypothetically, this team is 6-2 or 5-3. then I think that makes Mayo a little bit more cautious about throwing Drake May out there. If this team is winning more than losing with Jacoby Brissett, I think it'd be a dangerous thing to do to pull out the rug underneath from Brissett, go to May, because I think the players in that locker room, they wouldn't be thrilled with that. So in that type of situation, I think Mayo would continue to play the veteran quarterback that got them to that point. Because what the Patriots have said to us, Mayo and Wolf and everybody else, this is going to be a process. They're being patient with May. That's why I think they're not giving any kind of timeline. They're not giving a timeline with May because they want people to be patient. And they want to give Brissett a chance. If Brissett goes out there and he plays good football and the Patriots are surprising people, then they keep Brissett out there. If you go out and say Drake May is going to play in 2024, then Kincado, that's when you have an issue, right? If you come out and you say Drake May is going to play this season at some point, well, what happens if you're 7-5? What happens if you're hovering around 500 and you're only a game out or so of the wild card as the season wears on? Then you look like a schmuck. You gotta turn back, circle back, and put May out there because you said at some point in May that you were going to play the young man. So I think that's why they're all being patient. They're not giving us timelines, because if they do start surprising people and Brissett's playing well, I don't think they're going to want to mess that up. It is a great question, though, Kincado, and thank you for the super chat. Thunder Francis with a $10 super chat. Congrats on number 200, Nick. Really enjoy the show. Well, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. The financial contribution means the world to me. Again, if you throw some money towards me in the super chat, it's always appreciated. You jump to the front of the line with your comment, your question, and I always appreciate those who kick some money in towards me and help me survive doing this podcast day to day here on YouTube. All right, back to Elliot Wolf saying we spent money. We spent money. We spent money on the best tackle in free agency. We did spend. Retaining guys is spending money. I've said this from the beginning, and I'll stand by it. Some people try to move the goalposts in some weird way. Yeah, but it's their own players. I don't care. If you're spending money, you're spending money. Spending money on Kyle Duggar is still spending the money. If you decided to spend money on somebody else other than Duggar, it's still spending money. I don't understand why people try to turn this into some kind of pretzel. They twist it into a pretzel. It's rather simple to me. If you have money in your pocket and you spend that money in your pocket on something, then you're spending money. I just don't understand it. The only thing I can think of is these people want to hold on to their narratives, right? They want to hold on to their agendas. Just call it for what it is. Spending money is spending money. It's a fair argument raised by Eliot Wolf when he says we spent money by retaining guys, because that's precisely what they did. If you didn't spend, you wouldn't have a Wenu or Duggar, right? Or Hunter Henry. You have to pay money to get the player, whether you already have the player from prior years or you're going out in free agency and trying to sign that player. It's the same idea. More from Wolf. He said to Kay Adams, quote, draft and develop, that's what we're going to be. That's what we strive to be. That's where the core and the foundation is going to be. Some of our deals that we did in free agency were extending players that we drafted and developed previously. This got me thinking. I don't think I've said this before on the podcast, but I had a thought reading that from Eliot Wolf and listening to it. Wolf's philosophy cannot be impacted by what has happened in prior years. And what I mean by that is you are hiring, you are promoting, you are giving the top gig to Wolf so he can run through this wall of a 4-win team with his philosophy. He is not responsible for where the team was when he inherited the team. So if Eliot Wolf's philosophy is draft and develop like the Green Bay Packers and like many other teams in the NFL, if that is his philosophy, we should not expect or even want Wolf to do something different than that. I hope that makes sense. If he believes in draft and develop, he should be given time to draft and develop and prove his philosophy to be correct. We should not want him to go out there and spend $500 million in free agency just to do it. You're hiring Wolf to do the job, and he's going to do that job the way that he believes it should be done. It doesn't matter what happened last year. It doesn't matter what happened in prior years or how this team was structured or how this team was put together, right? This is the Elliot Wolf regime. And if he says, I'm going to draft and develop, then he's telling us this is about the next 2 to 3 years. And he deserves that right to run the team via his philosophy. And if he ends up being wrong 2 to 3 years from now, then he's going to take the criticism as he should. Then he's going to get fired likely by the Crafts. But I know people are frustrated because, the Patriots might not have gone out and gotten this delusional toy that was out there. I don't know what shiny toy everybody wanted unless it was Calvin Ridley. And we went through the Ridley stuff. So, I don't know why people just wanted him to go out there and spend money on shiny toys that didn't even exist. This is about how he sees it. He's taking over the job, and he feels like the best way to compete in the long term is to draft and develop. That is at the heart of his approach. He doesn't have to care, and he shouldn't care what happened last year, the year before that. It's about the right now. It's about, what he's going to do with his point of view on how to run an organization. And it's a difficult situation for Wolf because he has that draft and develop philosophy, but he's inheriting a team that won so much in prior years with Tom Brady and company. The last few years has not been nearly as successful. He's inheriting that team. He's inheriting a situation where fans are very frustrated, and justifiably so. You're allowed to be frustrated as a fan. Nothing wrong with that. And people are frustrated by the results on the field over the past couple of years. Wolf is inheriting this situation. He's inheriting those frustrations, but his philosophy is draft and develop, which is going to take patience. And that's very, very difficult, right? He's trying to preach patience to some fans and some media that can't help themselves but be impatient. It's a very difficult task. And we'll see if it works. All right, I have more thoughts on Elliot Wolf's appearance on Up and Adams, but first, the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by our friends at Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Warzone has 9 maps on 30-plus acres of land, hilltop forts, trench warfare maps, everything that you want. They've got paintball and airsoft. They've got paintball and airsoft kid versions as well, something for every age group starting at 6+. They will take care of you. It's a casual environment, low-key. Show up, make sure you got some good shoes on, long sleeve shirt, unlike me right now, with some jeans so you can protect the body. If you're new to this thing, don't worry about it. Warzone, that they have made sure that they've cultivated plans with all of these games they have to take care of the beginners. Again, it's very low-key. You don't have to be an expert paintballer to go there. And it's a lot of fun. 4.9 star rating because they have a bomb staff. So check them out. North Kingston, Rhode Island. They support this program by sponsoring the show. It means the world to me. They support me. And I always think, businesses that support other local businesses or ventures, we need to support them. So if you're interested in paintball or airsoft, check them out. North Kingston, Rhode Island, 401-228-6366. That's 401-228-6366. And when you talk to them, let them know that I sent you. Every negotiation has a limit. Every single negotiation has a limit. And so when you look at Elliot Wolf, when he says, quote, so I think that's the key. We were in on a lot of players in free agency. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we just felt like either just didn't make sense financially. And he says free agency is a hit or miss business. We were hit or miss in 2021. We have a few guys that are still here and a few that didn't work out when we spent all that money. So every situation is different. We feel like we did what was best for the team. What we all have to understand is that there is a limit on every single negotiation. A team has in mind, we're not willing to go this far for this player because we don't think that player is worth that money. That's what it's all about. This doesn't just happen in football. Trust me. I had a radio negotiation a few years ago to be in a market, and it was a great market. It was a fun situation. We had a negotiation, and they felt, hey, this is what we can afford to pay you. I did not agree with that amount of money, so I walked away and kept the job that I had at the time. That's how negotiations work. There are always lines that are drawn in the sand. So you can be in on players, but inevitably the answer has to be, are we comfortable giving that guy that kind of money? Do we think that guy justifies that money? A key question is, are you spending X amount of dollars on a player because you think that player is worth the investment and you feel like that player is worth that money and that player is going to bring that kind of value to your football team, basketball team, whatever team? Are you giving him that payday? Are you giving her that payday because you believe that person is actually worth that money? Now, of course, there's some give and take. There's always a case where maybe they're not worth as much money as you paid them, but you feel that it's relatively close. And hey, to get the player, you get the deal done. But at a certain point, you got to draw the line, right? So what Elliot Wolf is saying is, yeah, we were in on players, but we weren't going to be ridiculous by overpaying somebody by X amount of dollars just so we can go back to the fans and the media and say, hey, we signed somebody. We're not going to be irresponsible just so we can win the headlines for the day. So you have to ask yourself the question, do you think the player is worth the investment, or are you just in the middle of a measuring contest, so to speak? Signing any player because you're just worried about the measuring contest is not how to do business. Now, I'm going to end on this point before we get to Drake May in some OTA notes. Again, the debate will rage on. People will continue. People will continue to say they're cheap again. They're not spending money. Robert Kraft is just being cheap. There's zero foundation regarding this offseason to say that, because it's just not true. It's not true. As a friend of mine in the business would say, fact, not opinion. Fact, the Patriots have spent money. And I'll prove it to you in a minute. But to go out there and say, oh, they're just cheap, it's just zero foundation to that point. This offseason, they've spent money. So unless you're trying to continue with just your agenda and being stubborn, that is not factual. And I say this again, it's not why they spent, it's did they spend? Don't move the goalpost. It's a simple question. Did they spend? The answer is yes. Elliot Wolf is correct. They spent money, and they spent a good chunk of money. As a matter of fact, according to Over the Cap, the Patriots this offseason, number 8 in total spending, number 10 in total guarantees, number 6 in full guarantees, and number 5 in first-year cash. They spent money. They have not been cheap this offseason. You can argue about the groceries that they bought, but you cannot argue if they bought them. Simple as that. You can argue about Kyle Duggar's contract and if he was worth it, but you can't argue that they spent on Kyle Duggar. They did. They offered Calvin Ridley $40 million. They had talks with San Francisco about Brandon Ayuk, knowing that Ayuk was going to cost them a ton of money if they acquired him, which shows you that they intend to spend more money if the player is worth it. All right, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Again, all the likes mean the world to us. We hit, 200 likes. I'd love to get to at least 250 likes. I know it's in late May. People are on vacations and stuff. Traffic tends to go down on online and all of that. But if you give us that like, still means as much as it did going back a month, 2 months ago. So don't forget to give us that like. It takes a second of your time to click that thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe as well. Trying to get to 3,500 subscriptions. Rate and review. All right. Jump to another super chat here. We've got Derek Irish says, why are people high on the Bears' future, but not the Patriots? I think it's because, if you look at the offensive weapons, Derek, Chicago is in a different stratosphere right now, right? I would take DJ Moore over pretty much any wide receiver the Patriots have. I would take Rome Odunze over any receiver the Patriots have. I would probably take Keenan Allen over any over any receiver the Patriots have. And Caleb Williams was the best quarterback in this draft if you just go by, his college career, what he's accomplished, the expectations, all of that. I mean, they're just, simply put, they're just more talented than the Patriots right now. And I don't think that's really a debate, honestly. I mean, they've got 3 receivers that would be Patriots wide receiver 1 on this team. So I think that's why people are talking about Chicago. And they also played better last year, right? I mean, they weren't bad last season. Everybody looks at the first pick overall. And let's not forget that first pick overall was because of the trade with Carolina. It wasn't because the Bears stunk, right? It wasn't because they were just god-awful last year. So they're kind of in a situation where, they won 7 games last year. They added more talent to their team this year via the draft and trades and free agency. You would expect them to take a little bit of a step forward, right, with that talent. I mean, they won 7 games last year with Justin Fields and not as good wide receiver core. So I think when we look at the Patriots, we're looking at the Patriots trying to get to what Chicago got to last year. Chicago, meanwhile, is trying to take that next step. All right, let's get to some OTA news and notes. Drake May in a minute. First, let's start with Gerard Mayo telling the media that Keion White has caught his eye. Mayo said White has caught his eye and he's been more open in meetings. And I love hearing this from Gerard Mayo. And White certainly seemed more comfortable in his skin with the media when he spoke to them. And a lot of people covering this team, even though it's been a couple of OTA practices they've witnessed, they will tell you that White has been more verbal. He seems a little bit more laid back. And again, just more comfortable, which makes sense. It's his second year in the NFL, right? He had to get through that rookie season. We know that he was somewhat guarded. We all know that he was, super serious and all that stuff, even when he was drafted. But now it's his second year. I'm sure he feels like he has a much better handle on what's going on. And now you would expect him and you would hope him to take that next step. And so if Keion White has a leap this year, that makes this defense even better. If White makes that leap, and I'm not saying a Christian Barmore-like leap, but if White becomes a guy who you can depend on week in and week out to make at least a couple of impact plays, then that makes this defense even better, a defense that was ranked 9th in DVOA last year. White can play outside on edge. He can play inside as well. So I love hearing about Keion White and the coaches talking him up a bit. Sounds like he is doing exactly what he should be doing. And if this continues as we get through mandatory minicamp and head towards training camp, I would be very excited about Keion White. Very excited. Because, now you talk about Barmore and Judon and Gonzalez, the guys that are coming back. If you can add White to a mix of young, talented players getting snaps out there, that's nothing but a good thing for the Patriots. So I love hearing all the compliments being sprayed towards Keion White early in this process. And let's see if he builds upon that. It's OTAs, okay? I want to warn everybody, it's OTAs. I'm not going to go too crazy, but Drake May was good yesterday according to all reports. Now, I'm trying to get a credential for these things. Hopefully, Greg Bedard can come through in Boston Sports Journal and I get to go to some of these practices here down the road. All I can do is go off of what people saw and what they said, what they wrote. And so pretty much everybody said yesterday that Drake May was good. He got off to a slowish start. We'll get to what Phil Perry wrote. But Drake May had a good practice, if not very good practice yesterday. Here's what our friend Phil Perry posted. Step in the right direction for May. Slowish start. In team periods, had an overthrow on a deep shot to Juju, then had to rehuddle after a communication issue, and subsequently threw incomplete on a tight end screen to Austin Hooper. May picked it up from there. He completed 14 of his next 16 attempts. His best throw of the day was an in-the-bucket, deep completion to Tyquan Thornton, perfectly placed. Again, it's OTAs. I'm not doing cartwheels. I'm not going crazy. I'm not throwing parades outside my apartment over the OTAs. But it's improvement. And that's what you want to see. As May continues to work on many of the foundational elements of being a quarterback, he continues to work out with his feet and his throwing motion and all of these other little things, getting in the huddle, getting out of the huddle, working on his cadence, working on chemistry and communication with his teammates. There's so many boxes that May has to check. But all I want to see is some improvement. And so last week, he wasn't as good as he was this week. That's a good thing. Not putting too much into it. We're doing baby steps here with Drake May on this show. We talked about for months. I don't know why everybody's breaking down quarterback rotations and quarterback reps. And why is Drake May QB3 when we spent months, literally months, discussing how May was going to take time, how he was somewhat raw. You're drafting potential. It's going to take some time. Let's see what he looks like at mandatory minicamp. Hopefully, by training camp, he is in prime position to battle Jacoby Brissett for QB1. That's what you want to see. I'm not getting wrapped up in, he only made 7 throws and Zappe made 11 throws in May. I'm not going to do that. It's all about the baby steps. It's about gradual progression with Drake May. And right now, from last week to this week, he was better. That's what matters. That is the only thing that matters. Not if Bailey Zappe got a few more snaps on May 29th. The question is Drake May improving from what we see and what's being reported? And that answer is yes. First week of OTAs, he wasn't nearly as good as he was in second week of OTAs. And I would also say this. Because of that, because May improved from last week, to this week, wouldn't you agree with me that means the Patriots are handling things so far the right way? If May continues to show improvement every step of the way during this preseason process, this camp process, if he continues to show that improvement, I think that tells us the Patriots are handling him the right way because he's making those improvements. They're not speeding him up too much. He doesn't look erratic. He doesn't look like he's throwing the football all over the place. He doesn't look confused all the time. I mean, we can't have it both ways, right? We can't sit there and say, why isn't he QB2 right now, but then not give credit to his improvement? Like, if he's improving, then that means being QB3 right now is probably the right approach. Now, of course, he could have improved as QB2, maybe. But I could argue that if you put him out there QB2 and you rushed him a little bit too much, maybe he actually would have been worse this week. So as far as he's improving, that should be the number one goal. Is he better today than he was yesterday? Is he better next week than he was this week? That's what we focus on with Drake May. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review. I think it's a key thing when we look at May that the fundamental things they are working on are not junking him up, so to speak, right? I always wonder, is he thinking too much? Would he be too worried about his feet? Would he be too worried about his motion that he just seems off? Well, not so much. It seems like he's taking to the coaching. He's working on the fundamentals, and it's not really screwing him up because, again, he's improving from week to week so far. So that's a positive. Another note from OTAs, Jacoby Brissett was the best quarterback. I would expect it. Right now, Brissett should be the best quarterback in OTAs. Brissett should arguably be the best quarterback during mandatory minicamp. Now, when we get to training camp and we get to like the second week of training camp, what does Brissett look like versus May? That's when we really start to look at the quote-unquote competition. But this early in the process, Brissett should be the best quarterback on the field. He right now is QB1. He should be QB1 right now. So I'm not surprised by any of that. We get to training camp, then we'll see. Has May really taken some steps forward from OTAs through mandatory minicamp up until training camp. How does he look early in training camp? And does he start to really put pressure on Brissett? That's when we have those conversations. But right now, it is Brissett QB1. And the rotation of Brissett and Zappe and then May doesn't surprise me. We have to be patient with Drake May. That was the entire idea of drafting the guy. You got to be patient. Being reasonable in this situation is being patient, at least in my mind. Joe Milton, if you're wondering, was not at OTAs yesterday. Really no word as to why that was. People are wondering about Zappe and why he's getting, all these 11-on-11s. I think he told us why yesterday. I mean, Zappe told the media yesterday that he's been told that this is going to be a competition. And so if you're a coach and you tell Bailey Zappe that this is going to be a competition, then you've got to make it competitive, at least this early on. I mean, if you say, hey, Bailey, this is going to be a competition, and then he's getting like 3 snaps, now you're just lying to him. And that's when you lose the player. And that's how you can start losing a locker room, by lying to guys. If you handle the rotation any differently and you're not giving Zappe a decent amount of snaps while you're telling him it's a competition, now you're contradicting the message. And I don't think that's smart. I think, as we know, Gerard Mayo is very, very in tune with what message he wants to send to players. And he wants to be a man of his word. And so if they tell him that during OTAs, this is going to be a competition, then this is how you do it. This is a competition. As you move forward and you get to mandatory minicamp, maybe that message from the coaches changes to Bailey Zappe. Maybe it changes when they get to training camp. But right now, it's early. They're working on Drake May. They're telling the quarterbacks this is a legitimate competition, and they're acting as if it's a legitimate competition, which I don't know. It makes sense to me. What wouldn't make sense is sitting the player down and saying this is a competition and then putting him on mothballs in the corner of the practice field. And so he sits there and he stews and says these guys are full of it. That would not make sense to me. Tyquan Thornton, he was good yesterday. Again, it's OTAs. He was good. Evan Lazar posted every spring with Tyquan Thornton, trying not to take the cheese this time, but he was making plays today. Looks a little bigger in the upper body. We'll see when the pads come on. And then Lazar added the Al Pacino pull me back in gif, which I thought was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. OTA environment. The question with Thornton has always been durability. Let's see if he continues to get through practices healthy. That's all I'll say. We'll see. Jury's still out. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. All of those things you can do for free. Takes really a few seconds of your time at the most. Means a lot to the show. That's how we build a community. Also, you can share videos that I throw out there on social media. I'm at Nick C Radio on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Threads, Facebook. You can check that out. Share the videos. It's always great. Your comments are always great. Even if we disagree, I love reading the comments. It's the best part of doing something like this is the interaction with all of you. All right. Let's wrap it up with a quick update on Kristaps Porzingis as we get ready for the NBA Finals, which is a week from tonight, no matter who wins the West. Joe Mazzulla told Zolak and Bertrand yesterday that Porzingis is ramping up the intensity. He told the media today that Kristaps has had no setbacks. Unless Porzingis gets re-injured, I expect him to play. I would be shocked if he doesn't play. Unless he's re-injured and they're talking about somebody who is, 50%, 60%. I just feel like, man, 75%, 80%, you got to play him a few minutes. You gotta play him a few. You have no more games after this series. This is it. This is it. As Mike McDonald would sing. This is it. This is all you got. You got a 7-game series left to win the whole damn thing. So even if Porzingis is out there, say he's 75%, 80%, if you don't feel like he's at risk of a serious injury, like, okay, well, if he goes out there, he's susceptible to blowing out his Achilles, then you might think about it. but I don't think he has to be 100% to play in the finals. If he can give you 15 to 20 good minutes, better than nothing. I'd be shocked if he doesn't play in this series. Again, unless he re-injures himself, there's some kind of serious setback. He's had 5 weeks. This injury usually takes about 6 weeks to heal up. So you're looking right at game 1 at about 6 weeks. And so will he be ready? I anticipate Porzingis giving the Celtics at least some minutes in this finals. And his impact cannot be overlooked against either of these teams. Whether it's Minnesota or Dallas, he will have impact in that series. Minnesota obviously is very big. You want to pull those bigs out to the three-point line. You want to stretch the floor. You want to have some rim protection as well. And when you're playing Dallas, if it is Dallas, which many of us think it will be because, obviously coming back from 3-0 never happened in the NBA. If it is Dallas, you've got Derek Lively. As far as he comes back from getting kneed in the back of the head, it's expected he will be back. You've got Gafford as well. So you've got some big guys who can test you at the rim. And again, those guys, they protect the rim pretty well. So you want Porzingis out there to pull them away from the bucket defensively. So Porzingis would pay huge dividends, not to mention his impact on Al Horford and Horford's minutes. Not to mention your ability to play double big with both Porzingis and Horford if you have to. If you're going against a team like Minnesota, that's huge. So I do think Porzingis, his availability is a gigantic story. I know people are getting into this habit of, it doesn't matter. Celtics are the better team. Porzingis is very, very critical to the operation. The NBA is all about matchups. You'll hear me say that about 1,000 times over the next couple of weeks. The NBA is all about matchups. Just because one team dominates against another team doesn't mean they're going to dominate against the next team they play. That's not how that league works. All about matchups. And Kristaps Porzingis makes the matchup much better for you if he's out there versus either of these two teams in the NBA Finals. So hopefully he's good to go. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. I appreciate every single one of you. If you're looking for exclusive content, I got the Patreon page, patreon.com/Nick Cattles. That's cranking. You can check it out, $5 a month. I'm back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for a Friday edition of the Nick Cattle Show. Until then, thank you and be well.